We're speaking with Alessandro Rosini. He is a spokesperson for the Australian Monarchist League. We're looking toward the coronation of King Charles III. Alessandro, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ricky.
Look, there's a whole lot of things that don't appear to be happening in Australia in recognition of the coronation of the King, who is our head of state here in Australia. I'll just be chasing up one in particular about whether we're going to have a public holiday. It doesn't look like that's happening.
Well, we're not sure. The government hasn't said anything. They've been very, very quiet on the matter. There was news that broke yesterday in WA, which is suggesting that the Premier of Western Australia, Mark McGowan, is considering a public holiday for Western Australians and would encourage other states and territories across the country, should the federal government not have a national public holiday, for the states and territories to hold their own individual state public holidays. We think it would be an opportunity not only for Australians who are interested in our system of constitutional monarchy to celebrate the coronation, but also just everyday Australians to enjoy an extra day off, to visit regional communities and holiday communities and spend a little bit of money in Australia and go for holidays. We think that would be a good opportunity and a good excuse to have a public holiday to celebrate our democratic system of government and to celebrate the coronation of the King.
I think Australians love their public holidays, that's for sure, but when Premier Daniel Andrews was asked about this on Tuesday, he deflected to talking about a Bombers grand final. It doesn't sound like Premier Daniel Andrews is too interested.
Look, it doesn't, but I guess that's to be expected. Premier Andrews is a Republican, of course, and we have seen since the election of the Albanese Labor government this move to have republicanism by stealth, in which they will attempt to change things in relation to the way Australians have a relationship with their monarch by doing it through stealth. For instance, we saw following the Queen's death, the Queen's cipher removed from the gates of Yarralumla and Government House, and to date they haven't been replaced with the King's cipher. We saw the monarch removed from our $5 note and not replaced, as is tradition for the monarch to appear on the lowest denomination of Australian currency. So we have seen this move, particularly by politicians associated with the Labor Party, who are majority are Republicans, to take decisions to remove Australia's link with the monarchy. I would say this to the likes of Premier Andrews and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, is that Australians voted against the Republic in 1999 through a democratic process. Victoria voted against the Republic in 1999. And until such a time where Australians vote in favour of a republic, we should celebrate our system of constitutional monarchy, because at the end of the day, that's what Australians voted for.
Now, I note in South Australia this coming weekend, there's a ceremonial sitting for what they're calling the creation of their voice to Parliament in that state. But have we previously had ceremonial sittings or events outside Parliament houses for coronations when Queen Elizabeth was crowned back in, I think it was 53?
It was in 1953. Look, in regards to ceremonies, they'll likely be taken up by the viceregal residences, which represent the King of Australia in Australia. So that would include Government House in South Australia, Government House in Victoria, obviously the official residence of the Governor-General in Canberra. And that's where we'll probably see, from an official capacity, those sort of events take place. Parliament events relating to the monarchy and Parliament House is normally the accession. So we saw in South Australia and other state and territories outside the steps of their Parliament House, the Accession Day proclamations, and that's sort of the role that Parliament plays on Accession Day. But in regards to the coronation, it'll probably be the vice-regal office, which is held by the Governor, who represents the King in Australia.
Now, speaking of 1953, and it's been some time since we've had a coronation, going back to that public holiday debate, wasn't there a public holiday back then for when Queen Elizabeth took the crown?
There was a public holiday for the 1953 coronation of Her Majesty the Queen, and following precedent, there also was one for the 1902, 1911 and 1937 coronations as well. And with that in mind, and following existing precedent as a constitutional monarchy, we are calling on the government to hold a public holiday for the coronation of the King. As we said, I think Australians enjoy their public holidays, and I can't see why we would deny Australians the opportunity to have an extra day off, go and enjoy a holiday in a local community, and I think it would be well received by Australians.
Now, just one last one. I just wonder about, you used to see a lot more around the place, a portrait of Her Majesty in public buildings, in courthouses and the like. I haven't seen any emerge yet of King Charles. Are they going to come out at some stage?
They should do it. It's normally customary for new photos of the monarch to replace the previous monarch after the coronation. Now, obviously, the king will be crowned on May the 6th. So we would expect to see new portraits of His Majesty the King up around official government buildings in Australia following his coronation.
All right, well, Alessandro, there's a whole lot of things that seem to be not taken care of at the government level. We're only about 6 or 7 weeks away from the coronation occurring, if not less. So we'll chase that up with some of our governments and see if they've got anything to say. Thanks so much for joining us from the Monarchist League today.
Thank you, Ricky.